If you have a little flag that comes up on your screen, just hit the continue button if you're happy. If you're not, please, I don't have any option but just to say, hey, either keep quiet or we do have many people that request the recording afterwards, and it's because they're either busy in a bid adjudication meeting or a bid committee meeting of some sort, and they do want to get the updates. So thank you. We've not had any issues so far. Let's just quickly get into the discussion for today. Just to quickly make you aware, if you're not already aware, that there is a circular that was issued on Friday by National Treasury on the formula to use, the preferential procurement formula to use for disposals, leasing, and any revenue activity that you might have in your organization. So this is applicable to every single organ of state. I'm actually quite surprised that they've done this. They've taken the formula that was in the 2001 regulation and put that out in terms of a circular. I stand to be corrected, but it does not seem to be a requirement, a mandatory requirement that your disposals or leasing use that formula. The wording is not great in terms of the circular, but I did attach it to the emails that I sent out to everyone that was registered. Let's see if there's some appetite to have a discussion on this further. Anyone know when it is effective from? Anyone had a look at it?
Sean, it's effective from the first. Yeah, it is effective from the 1st of August 2021.
Also 1st of August. So another. Hey, Tabello, is that right?
Yes, that's me.
All right. So 1st of August. So the same time as the requirement for this particular update is needed as well. So let's get into the topic of today, and this is a topic that was requested of a couple of people, just to say, hey, we've got this requirement to get our policy updated by the 1st of August to comply with instruction 2, but there's a lot of new stuff that's being requested. So can we maybe just have a discussion? And this is going to be a facilitated discussion. I have no intention of running through and telling you what to do. That's not the goal for today. And so let's just quickly recap on what this is all about. And while I'm doing that, I'm just encouraging you, please, to try and just participate in that poll. It is anonymous, so there's no issue if you do admit that you haven't started the thing, or it's something you haven't done, or it's not yet approved. It's not my intention. It's just to try and get a sense from those who are on today where you stand in terms of getting it done. So the instruction came out in May, and the first part of the instruction actually said that this was effective from the 1st of July, and there was subsequently an amendment to that said it takes effect from the 1st of August. Some of us had written to Treasury and encouraged them to try and make it a range and try and not make a specific date like this as they had done with the previous one, but that in their wisdom, they decided to do that. So it is effective from Sunday, which means that when you hit the road on Monday and you start doing quotations, if you haven't updated the instruction, I think there's a fairly strong likelihood that you might start incurring irregular expenditure. What has it done? There are a lot of changes in this, but the main substance of the instruction was to change the threshold value of quotations from 500,000 to 1 million. And that is exactly what the draft is that they put out in, I think it was September, October last year. They put a draft out, and they did in that draft put that threshold of R1 million in there. And that certainly is, by some quarters, that is welcome. But what was new and what was interesting in this is section 325. Hi, Grant, go ahead. Yes, let's keep this interactive.
Sorry, Sean, to disturb you. I'm just curious. You said, so when we hit the road on Monday, we're going to incur irregular if we're not up to date on this. But what if we haven't updated our policies and procedures, etc.? Do you have a feeling which one's going to take precedent? Is it going to be, I mean, if I go out for if my policy still says from 500,000, I've got to go to tender, but actual fact, I'm going to go out and buy something that's going to cost 800,000, and I'll just get 3 quotes. When the auditor comes in, which one's going to take precedence here?
I think it's a great question, Grant, and for me, it's the fact that this section 325 is there, that says that you must update your SCM policy, and then it lists these 10 areas that must be included in the policy. And this applies, as far as I can make out from the instruction, these process requirements are applicable from 2,000 Rand upwards. So it's not just a threshold change. It's a change to say we've got from every quotation that you do from Monday, from 2,000 Rand upwards, must comply with your SCM policy and must comply with the process requirements outlined in that policy. Does that make sense, Grant? So even if you do not change the threshold and you do a quotation for 50,000 Rand, for example, if your policy is not yet updated and you do not comply with that part of the policy, I think that 50,000 Rand quotations at risk of a irregular expenditure. Was that your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So these are the 10. Let me just quickly jump to the next slide, which is some work that I did just to try and unpack this a little bit and understand where it is that we stand. So if we take each of those, I think it is 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's 10 sections in 325. Let's just go back to that extract from the instruction. It said you must, in the SCM policy, prescribe the processes to be followed for the invitation of price quotations, including but not limited to the following. So if we go through each one of these, the first one there is the person/committee responsible for drafting the specification. We've never had to put anything, describe that to date. There's no prescript that we've had up till now that says you need to describe who is responsible for drafting the specification. The only thing we've got in the tenders legislation is the BSC. And then it goes on, it says the methodology for the selection of suppliers from CSD for the invitation to quote. And there's some references in there to 323 and 324A. We'll get to that. Now, all we've got so far from a prescript perspective is an instruction that says you've got to use the CSD, but the method is not described and the process is not described and we do have a process when it's not in the CSD. So that process is there where it's not in the CSD. Certainly it's not applicable for tenders. The period for invitation, so the closing date, there's no prescription right now. We do have the 21 days for tenders. The validity period of the quotation, there's nothing that's prescribed now. At the moment, the tenders, it's the BSC decides, and there's actually nothing that's prescribed either on that for tenders even. The method of inviting and receiving price quotations, including documentation, there's no prescript we've got right now. And all we've got is from an invitation perspective on tenders, we've got the reference to the government tender bulletin, e-tender, and then we've got some processes around tender box and public opening. Hi, Pravesh.
Morning, Sean. Morning, colleagues. Just to go back to the point on the validity, by way of introduction, I mean, I used to be in supply chain, and then I'm now moved to immovable asset, but I still have a great passion towards supply chain. So I'm quite intrigued by listening to the series of conversations on a weekly basis. The issue around the validity, I mean, I think you've mentioned now that there is no legislation that prescribes the tender validity. But I think we need to make the distinction, because in the goods and services, there might be nothing. But on the construction side, on the infrastructure, I think that both the FIPDM, which is your framework for infrastructure delivery, as well as your CIDB prescripts, which is your standards for uniformity, does indicate that it can only be 90 days, and it can only be extended by an equivalent number of days once that validity expires. So there is something on the infrastructure side, but not necessarily on the goods and services. I think we need to be mindful of that, because equally quotations will also apply to infrastructure on your minor repairs on a quotation basis, as well as quotations for goods and services as well.
Well done, well done. Thank you very much for that. Absolutely correct. I'm just going to run through these quickly, and then we can decide which ones we want to focus on. The process to be followed when inviting price quotations from foreign suppliers. Interesting addition that they've got there. The only thing we've got at the moment is what to do from a CSD perspective if they're not registered. There's also, I must also stand corrected there, there's also SBD 1 that describes what needs to be done as far as foreign supply is concerned. But in terms of the process to be followed when inviting is not described anywhere. The personal committee responsible for evaluation. I've just made a point there about the market-related pricing point. At the moment, all we've got is really on the BEC from a bid committee perspective. And then very interesting, H, the person/committee responsible for adjudication. And 324B refers there to negotiations. So, I'm assuming that it may not be the same, but I'm assuming that as we have for the bid adjudication committee, it's the bid adjudication committee that then would initiate the negotiations around the market-related pricing. I is an interesting one, record keeping for audits and record purposes. And then J is one around the provisions of the preferential procurement regulations. That's all it says. And we certainly know that the triple PFA, the regs, 2017 regs apply for 30,000. And one of the big things in there, which is interesting, is the whole notion around functional criteria. And that, I think, is a big one for institutions, many of whom are putting quotations out there without any functional criteria. So the application of regulations 6 and 7, I think it is, will be an important one to consider in that respect. So let's just quickly have a look. I've been running a poll and would really like your input on this one. It's just to try and, hey, Pravesh, go ahead.
Scott, just to go back to your bullet point F on the issue around invitation of quotations from foreign suppliers.
Yeah.
I just want to check. Look, the note doesn't specifically indicate anything, because I would imagine then they've placed that issue around foreign suppliers simply because we are supposed to use local service providers or local content, or the applicability of local content. So I'm not sure. Look, there's few items that you'd buy from foreign suppliers, but I'm not sure to what extent. I mean, because there's a lot of encouragement around purchasing from. I think each province does have a list. Like, for example, we in KZN, we have Operation Vula, which then gives you the premium priorities in terms of. So to what extent, I mean, would we now have to include local content in your policy, which is already an instruction, versus the foreign suppliers? Yeah.
There are many institutions, Pravesh, that do buy from foreign suppliers, particularly if they're in some of the high-tech space and they don't have suppliers in the country, then they've got no alternative. It's also, from a quotations perspective, an interesting one, because this applies to a lot of the other smaller stuff that is only available from foreign suppliers, like the subscription services and a couple of things like that. So those oddities, but point made. So yeah, I guess it's where you do have to buy from foreign. What is the process that you're going to follow then, if it's a quotation? So the poll that we've got now, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time just because I'm not quite sure this is representative of where everybody stands in terms of the status of your policy. So the three options, the 6 options that we've described there. The first one is it's completed, it's been approved by your accounting authority or your accounting officer or delegated authority. Everyone's trained, everyone's ready, and you're ready for implementation 1st of August. So that's the first one. It's done, approved. Everyone knows what to do. Monday morning when they come in, you can rock and roll. The second one is it's there, it's approved. We've still got some training, or training is not needed. That's number 2. Number 3, it's completed, but it's not yet approved by the accounting officer, accounting authority, or delegated authority. Number 4, it's draft but not complete. Number 6 is it's not yet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not yet started, and 6, it's not required. We're in the municipality, or we're in the parliament, or we're Schedule 2, 3B, or 3D. So just a quick last one, and then I'll end this poll. Anyone else want to take a stab at to where you are on the status of getting your policy ready for these issues? Okay, let's close it off. Let me end the poll. I'll share this with you now. There we are. We had last second come in there. There's the status. So 9% have completed it. 36% have completed but not yet approved. The majority, 45%, have not yet started, and there's a couple of that have started that's in draft but not yet completed. So quite interesting, the status. We're sitting at Wednesday, and quite a lot to do to get ready. If I think you need to be ready at the level that I think you need to be ready in. So that's interesting. Let me stop sharing that. And for those that have done some work on the policy, and there's not many, I've got another little poll now, just quickly to get a sense from you, the approach that you've taken to this quotations process issue. So if we go back to the 325, it says that you must include the processes in your SCM policy. So what approach, for those that have updated it, what approach have you taken to describing those processes? So the first option there is you've got one set of processes for every quotation you do between 2,000 and 1 million rand. First option, one set of processes. So these 325A to J is described for quotations, and any quotation between 2 and 1 million, it covers. Number two is you've said, hey, let's just keep quotations as it is, 2 to 500,000, and anything above 500,000, we're just going to treat exactly the same as tenders. So we're actually not going to take advantage of the possibility that we've got here. We're going to just treat it the same as tenders, and no change. Number three is you've said let's have two sets of processes. So we'll have some processes for this range, and we'll have a different set of processes for this range. So you might say anything from 2,000 Rand to 250,000 Rand, these are the processes you follow. Anything above 200,000 Rand to 1 million, these are the processes you follow. Similar to number two, that is interesting. The fourth one there is you've actually got three different ranges. You've said 2,000 to 250,000, 250,000 to 270,000, to 750,000, 750,000 to 1 million. You've got three sets of updates. And then the second last one is all we've done is we've just changed the threshold, but we've not included the 10 process requirements. And then the last one there is you're just not sure, or you're undecided at this point in time. So just quickly, let's get a sense of some of the thinking that exists with those that have joined us today. So one set of processes for everything from 2,000 to 1 million, or you're going to keep it more or less the same as what we've got now, quotations and tenders, or you've got two sets or three sets, or you've just updated the threshold in the policy just to get a little bit of a sense of where people are. We're pretty close to the number of people that that participated last time. Let's just share this with you. I think you'll find this interesting. All right, so there we are. Let me share the results there. So 23% of you have said we've got one common set of processes. There's a couple have said we're just going to keep to the 2 to 500,000, and 500,000 is the same for tenders. 3, there's a couple that have said we're just going to have 2. There's a few more that have said we actually got 3 different ranges. And then there's a bunch that have said that, hey, we're just going to update the threshold from the 500,000 to 1 million. And there's a couple more that are still not decided. So there we are. There is some interesting perspectives on the approaches that some have taken. So let's get into discussing a little bit more around this. And I'm going to invite those that have done some work or have done some thinking to start sharing. I don't want to dominate this discussion any further. So let's take a stab. I'd like to suggest just to talk around this particular one here, around the approaches that you've taken just to comply with this first point. This is a fairly easy one, where you required to say who is responsible for drafting the specification for quotations, 2,000 Rand to 1 million. Anybody want to start off and say, hey, this is the approach we've taken? I did send some emails to couple of you to say, hey, please, if you wouldn't mind just sharing what your thoughts have been. So anyone want to just kick off then? Khalaletso, welcome. You're in a provincial public entity.
Thanks, Sean.
PFMA 3C.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thanks. For us, we currently have prepare in terms of the changes. They still have to be approved. I think it will be rather on Thursday or Friday that they have been submitted. But in terms of that line, in terms of the committee responsible, we have always doing the specification for the RFQs. So that for us wouldn't be a new thing in the process. Normally it has been the led by the user department or expert within the units and the supply chain that they've been combining. So we have been having the practice in the entity to do the specification for the RFQs that are being above a certain threshold. Like we've always have above 100K in terms of having functionality and specification being fully drafted and formalized to go to the market. So we will be keeping that as it is that we're practicing it at the moment.
So Khalaletso, what does your policy say about who is responsible for compiling the specification if it's a 10,000 Rand quotation?
Is the user department and supply chain.
The user department and supply chain. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, my speaker wasn't very user department and supply chain.
Yes.
Okay, very good. And sorry, just say the thresholds again that you've got there. What?
Currently we've been doing what we call formal quotations, where we're having functionality from a threshold of 100,000.
100,000. Okay.
Yes. So we'll keep it the same throughout to the million threshold at the moment. And what we have introduced, which have already been there but was not formalized, was what we call the technical evaluation committee in terms of the quotations. That's what you have. We always had it, but it was never like
formally described in the policy.
Yes, formally described. So and that's what we have introduced for to formally describe what is actually the technical evaluation committee, and that we call it technical evaluation committee just to differentiate to the tendering process for the bid evaluation committee. There's nothing around it to say special around it. We just call it the TEC because then it becomes easy to abbreviate, and
Fantastic.
it that differentiation as well in terms of the process. To say we have a BEC and the TEC, and what's the function. And we also have kept that the TC has to have a minimum of 3 people in terms of the skill to be able to evaluate a particular quotation that is going to the market.
Great. Let's come back just now to the methodology for selecting. But if we can jump, you've shared with us what you've done. If we can jump to the adjudication one, the person committee, that's H, the person committee responsible for adjudicating. What's your approach been on that one?
The issue in terms of the adjudication process is still in terms of where we still having the debate in terms of, because we haven't finalized in terms of who need to adjudicate, because previously what we normally just used to have the TEC, and then the recommendation from the TEC will go it will go in line with our internal delegated authority. In terms of threshold of the procurement. Like for example, we'll say, because I have 5 entities, different entities, and all 5 different entities, their CEO has delegated the authority from the board differently.
Got you.
And that's
Got you.
normally where the
So,
challenge.
yeah.
There's not like you'll find, like, for example, at automotive at AIDC, the CFO can sign up to commit the organization to any contract up to the 350K values. So if the RFQ has been falling within that threshold for that delegation, then the recommendation from the TEC will go to that respective delegated authority, and then with the whole presentation of the reports, the decision-making process, the evaluation sheets, and he will do his the decision-making if he agrees or not, or sending it back to go back to SCM or ask for inputs or clarities, and then he gets presented with that, and then the approval gets made. So we haven't get to the point to say now who has to be sitting to adjudicate, and then at from what threshold in the adjudication. And it's something that also the accounting officers in respective entities and our audit committee, nobody wants to make decision to say that we should have to say who should be actually be in the BAC. And I think in the tomorrow's meeting, in terms of clarifying that process where I'm presenting in terms of a way forward for the adoption of the process, then as well we'll have that debate to say how will the adjudication be formulated, and who then needs to sit on the respective RFQs at portfolios, and if we need to look at the certain threshold that we've been keeping at the moment. And the current thing the organization they feel is that it should go in terms of line of the complexity of the project, because we also dealing different vast projects across the 5 entities that come through with it. And then we can say we're going to have the standard.
Khaleletso, your understanding of adjudication and its application for tenders, do you think that it would be a quick and easy to just apply the same logic that the person who now is approving the quotation must also adjudicate? Or do you think that a separate role is needed?
For the quotation, I don't think that a separate role is needed. Otherwise, it will just lengthen the process and then result in efficiencies in the organization. Unlike where on tenders, where it's a delegated a function to the BAC. But for the quotation, the approver is ultimately the same. It should be, for me, it should be the same person that do the education to fasten also the process, and it should come with the implementation of efficiency, because I don't want to see this quotation thing now dragging into actually a 2 tender process way. It's either if you keep your 500 tendering process, or you do quotations, and then you can now double dip on the process, and then otherwise it's just not going to defeat the purpose of efficiency.
So that might be the way around that one. Okay, good. Thank you for sharing that. We'll come back to the methods, and just now let's just jump. So there we've got a view from Gauteng. What about the Eastern Cape? Sipho, have you done any work? Sipho Hlwempu, have you done any work yet on the policy in the Eastern Cape? Anyone else in the Eastern Cape? Hey, Sipho. All right. What about
Hi,
yeah? Hi.
Hi, John. We haven't done any work.
Still to do, hey?
Yes, still to do.
Yeah. Love your honesty. Thanks, Sipho. I hope this is of value to you guys. What about the Western Cape? I see we do have 1 or 2 people from the Western Cape. Azra, anyone else from the Western Cape? Azra, what is the approach taken? Who else is in the Western Cape? Marsha? Anyone else? Hey, Marsha. It's fine. I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable that they're being pressured to respond. Okay, let's maybe see if there's anyone in any of the other public entities that actually, is there anyone from Limpopo? We do often have a Limpopo here, and Northwest as well. Anyone Northwest? Just quickly scanning. Anyone Limpopo? All right, what about the public entities? Anyone want to put their hand up and just share some thoughts around the approach you've taken as a public entity?
Sean?
Hello, Ozzy.
Yeah, I think on our side, what we've done is that we kept sort of the existing policy choice that we had regarding evaluation, where we have a clause where, say, the NRF may utilize statutory 3 committee process, namely BSC and the BEC for quotes. But what we've done is that we've just adjusted that limit from 500,000 to 1 million. So we have the option to use the evaluation committees for risky projects or procurements. So that's the approach we've taken there.
And okay, so you haven't got down to saying then if you're doing a specification for 3,000 Rand, this is who's responsible for developing the specification. You've just said if it's risky, then we'll use the bid committee system.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
And anything around points such as the days to invite and validity period, things like that?
Yes, we've specified those as that is required in the instruction note.
Right.
Yeah.
And have you tiered that? Have you done that for different thresholds at all? Or as you said, hey.
We've sort of tried to, in certain instances, depending on what we're talking about, tiered it, but also try to keep it as less complicated as possible.
Yeah.
So for advertisement periods, we've tiered it for 2,000, between 2,000 and 10,000. Then we have 10,000 to 100,000, then 100,000 to 500,000, then 500,000 to 1 million.
So quite a number of tiers. Yeah.
Yes. Depending, because I mean, we try to ensure that we expedite our procurement process by limiting the minimum days requirement, because we have like 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, and 10 days respectively.
Okay. So is that the number of days you've got? Right.
Sure. Yeah.
And what about validity period? Have you taken a similar approach to that?
No, on the validity periods, we try to take a very simplified approach, in that we're saying, a 60-day validity period. We've actually moved from the 30 days to
just push it out.
Push it up to 60.
Keep it simple. Yeah. And how have you approached the adjudication? Is it the evaluation adjudication? I guess it's the same way as the spec one. You've just said, if required, we'll use the bid committee system. Is that what you've done? Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dwazi. Any other thoughts that you think might be worthwhile sharing?
So I think we have an interesting one where we're using a comply or explain approach. I think that's best practice that we've adopted. So, for example,
just expand on that a little bit for the uninformed.
Okay, so the comply and explain is basically a method or an approach that we've taken, where, for example, we have an advertising period of, say, 3 days for between 10,000 and 100,000. If you end up not using those 3 days or use more, you need to just provide justification as to why you have not done that. So it does not necessarily mean you must go and get approval for not using or not complying to that, but it's a matter of just explaining.
Just
so that's
explaining.
the principle. Yeah.
And what form is that explanation in? Where is that captured?
It would be captured in the approval request. So you just need to explain that type of format.
Okay. And the approval request is once the specification has been completed. Here's the specification.
Yes, so you then need to provide conditions as to, I mean, the reasons for the rationale. Yeah. Behind you not using those prescribed days.
Very good. So it's not a requirement to go to someone else and get approval for it. You just need to explain why you're not doing it, and as long as the explanation is there, and the person who then approves or signs off the specification for issuing is the one that will then decide if that was reasonable or not.
Correct.
Is that the idea? Very good. Very good. Any other thoughts that you think might be of interest? Have you unpacked a little bit around the preferential procurement regulations? So this issue, you heard Khaleto was saying that everything from 100,000 Rand upwards, they're using functional criteria with a threshold. Have you thought about that at all? Or
no, I don't think we applied
around J. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks, Lwazi. I see a couple of your other colleagues online. Anyone else want to add to that? Lindiwe, your comply or explain must be quite a nice thing from a compliance perspective.
Morning, Sean.
Good morning,
sorry,
Lindiwe.
today I'm listening, but unfortunately I won't be able to participate because I'm doing some stuff on the side.
Not a problem. Thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you,
want to. Very, very good. Let's move on. Anyone else? Any other public entities? I see Dane is on. Let's already covered you, Dane, and you guys at AIDC. Are you guys ready to run on Monday? Anyone else? Just having a quick look.
Sorry, Sean.
Yeah, hi.
One thing that I wanted to say on the issue of the validity, even though it's not a prescript, but I still have to double check if whether that instruction note of appointment of consultants, whether it was issued in terms of section 76 of the PFMA, but it does say that when you invite a bidders or on the terms of reference, you need to state that the validity period should be between 60 and 90 days.
That's true. That's that old practice note, hey?
Yes, that's correct.
Like
that's
2006 or something. It's or
2002, 2003. Yes.
Yeah, gee. Okay, you're right. You're right. I also noted the other day that the unsolicited bid practice note has got a validity period in of 6 months, which was an interesting one. So if anyone gives you an unsolicited bid, it needs to have a validity period in it of 6 months. Interesting. So yes, there are. Very good. Thank you for raising that. That's a very good point. 60 to 90 days on consulting. Okay, anything else? And I don't know how many policies we were actually going to remember to capture that, because that is the other approach that you can take, by the way, is not tier it financially, but you can group it by commodity and say these commodities we're going to treat this way, but all IT stuff we're going to handle in this way. So there is another way to do that. doesn't have to be at a financial level, financial threshold. Okay, let's just open up a little bit then the discussion around B, because this one is really intriguing in its wording and what they've said. So they say the methodology. Let me go back to just so you can see exactly what it says in the instruction. The methodology for the selection of suppliers from the central supplier database for invitation to quote. How have you approached this? So you'll notice that there are three terms that are used. Four actually, if you bring in the person. There's the processes. There is methodology, and there is method. And of course, we all also know that there is something called procedures as well. So interesting how the instruction is issued. It refers to three different things: process, methodology, and method. It doesn't describe these or define these anywhere, but certainly seems to state that there's a distinction between them. Anyone got any views around this one? The methodology for the selection of suppliers from the CSD for invitation to quote. Any thoughts on that one? Khaleletso, how are you approaching it? And or should I ask Dane to expand on this one?
Sean,
Go ahead, Emerson.
is this on the basis of closed tender or open tender or both?
So this is quotations, Emerson.
Okay.
So it's basically closed. Okay. It's a closed quotation where you are now going to invite, 3 or 4 or 5 suppliers to quote. So how do you select those suppliers off the CSD? What methodology do you use? Go ahead.
In our environment, we normally the process, if whatever is required by business, it's not well known, we go and fish in the market. That's your request for information.
So the methodology would be what? Market research first?
Yeah, there will be market research first internally by the consultant combined with the technical team. And then if we see that the technical team are getting more leverage into understanding what needs to be acquired, you just write the request for a quote that's open to everyone. Otherwise, it will be after the RFI, you will find the people that match your technical and functional specs. And because you're not looking at the pricing at that moment, you're just looking for technical and functional details. And then out of that, you know that there's like 10 or 6 companies that qualify, and they've been qualified within the CSD. Then you go after those and say, now you quoted us, now give us the cost related to that and any other information that now, because by then we'll have started a criteria of selecting the best bids.
Okay. So you're a Schedule 2. So this instruction doesn't apply to you. What does apply to you is instruction 4A, I think it is, which is that you've got to award only to people who are registered on CSD.
Yeah.
So, but interesting. Thank you, Emerson. Interesting. So you'd start off with market research first. So that would be the methodology.
Yeah.
Very good. And then fantastic. Thanks. Henry, I did see your hand, and then Danny.
Oh.
Sorry, Sipo. So you were actually.
No, Sean, I wanted to give it a try on the methodology relating to selection. Basically, what we do in our department, we first select suppliers based on commodities. And then we select 3 to 5, or it depends on the value or estimate amount of the project.
Right.
Then the issue of locality as well. If the service is required in a particular region, we then look at the area.
The location.
Yeah. So that's what we do, Sean, from our side. Thank you.
So that would be described then as your methodology, Sipo.
Yes, sure. Yes, sure.
The methodology would be a selection of methods, and the methodology then would be you first look at commodity, then you look at location.
Yes, sure.
Sipo, how do you approach triple BEE in this methodology? When do you start looking and saying, let's first invite level ones?
Sean,
any thoughts on that?
Yeah. The issue of BEE ever since that court case,
okay.
It has become a programmatic issue that we tend to consider in our department. So we just select suppliers based on locality. We don't necessarily look at the issues of the BEE level.
Thanks, Sipo. Now, Sipo, what I've not discussed here is that there's a reference in here to 323 and 324A. And what 323 says is that you actually need to state in your policy how many suppliers you will invite.
Yes, Sean.
Interesting. What we've had up till now is how many quotations you need to get. You got it? What 323 says is you need to, in your policy, state how many suppliers must you invite.
Okay.
And then it says, and you need to get at least 3 quotations. You need to receive 3 quotations. And if you don't, then you need to get approval. So an interesting little requirement there, Sipo.
Noted, Sean.
Good. Henry.
No, Sean, it's fine. I mean, you raised the point on Schedule 2s, but just in case there are Schedule 3Bs and 3Ds as well, that also don't apply to those types of institutions. Just you mentioned the Schedule 2s.
Just wanted to make it clear that. Thanks, Henry. Good one. Dan?
Hi, Sean. Morning. Sorry, I had an issue with my actual microphone, but I saw Khali coming up. Perhaps maybe let's give an opportunity to have a go at it. But I think just on the method specifically, we've been using Sage, which is a system basically that also draws from CSD. So, I mean, with regards to having to source, you would obviously go and filter in your commodities and so forth, which just makes it much easier. And when it basically filters out these vendors, it rotates them obviously, and it gives you a minimum of about 15, suppliers. That is basic minimum to that specific requirement, that it then pops out and gives you ultimately at the end. So I think it makes it much better instead of you having to go on to CSD itself and then having filtering from there. It's just, I think it's a bit more intrigued, and you'd have to explain a bit more actually, you know, from having to go from CSD, other than having some system that is already, you know, sort of linked into CSD.
Dane, that 15 is an interesting number. Do you think that's how it's going to, your system is going to be adapted so that it does that for all quotations from 2,000 to 1 million now?
Well, it's currently set to that. It's the minimum. Yeah,
okay.
it's currently the minimum that's set, but it's not specific or capped to 15. That is just a default sort of minimum number. So you can always increase it in that regard.
Yeah. And how does Sage select, if it does at all, on triple BE level? Is that one of the criteria, or is it just commodity first?
Well, I think as what the previous speaker has actually indicated in terms of this BE issue that we've seen playing out, and I think it's a bit of a dangerous playing field to play around. It's almost as if you are now exclusively putting certain business to certain individuals, and that cannot be. I mean, it's against the regulations. So once we start doing that, we are just, it's dangerous stuff.
Interesting.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Khalid, do you want to add anything to that?
Thanks, Sean, and thanks, Dan. Dan is right. I wanted to add to say the minimum selection method in terms of us going to market, for us, we always have that. So we always had the minimum number that we were not 15. Just applying. We were not just applying to say yes, you have to have 3 codes, but we always had the minimum that you can't go below, and we have set it up that as mandatory to the system. So if a buyer tried to go to the market below the minimum, it will just prevent that RFQ to be actioned, and it is something that, and you can, the number can be added in terms of the complexity of what you need, or in terms of the criteria that you require. Like for example, on certain, like on the youth month, we get mandate to drive the youth expenditure. Then you, over and above your minimum invitation of code, then you do your selection in terms of youth-owned enterprises. And what we have now done for our side is to look at that objective criteria in terms of that section 2 FG&E, that to say, to shy away from the current issues around the triple regulation that has been going around, and what I have now presented to accounting officer for the approval is to look in terms of that currently using the objective criteria to be able to advance the different. I just wanted Sean to give to say how we have put it. I'm just bringing up the.
Sure.
If you can just give me a minute, I'm just putting up my draft process so that I can just read how we have put that the regulation that we have referred to be able to.
While you're doing that, let me maybe engage a little bit with Dane. Dane, if okay, go ahead, Connie.
Yeah, what we have done is to look at the section 2(1)(f) of the Preferential Procurement Act, and basically looking at paragraph D and E in terms of as advancing certain goals we want to reach in terms of empowerment or targeting certain RFQs to be able to meet our targets, and that's what we have included in the current process.
The D&E is very much a pre-qualification type approach.
Yes.
So how have you built that into the logic? So just intrigued to understand that. So maybe if I can explain in some of those that we've worked with on this that have done a preferential procurement policy where they've thought through in their policy the priority that they will give to different groupings. They first look at for example, Black women, and if they don't find enough Black women, then they look for Black youth, and then they look for level ones, and then they look for level, and if they can't find enough level ones, then they look for level twos, and so they kind of describe the priority sequence. Is that built in at all into the logic in the system, or is it just?
What we have done now, Sean, for approval is in terms of what we have built up.
Okay.
Because, we were asked the question to say on particular targets that we have been given to meet into respective areas like women, youth, and also we have to draft around to say on a particular month as well. That has to be 100% drive. So because it was a request also that comes through from the MEC office to say if it's a youth month, it has they need to see 100%. And now we have to find ways that you actually now starting elaborate how you're gonna put the pre-qualifications in terms of these areas, because I didn't want to go to the PPI regulation that's still in question at the moment. And for me, that was the closest best option to be able to meet the targets. And I just kept being hammered for missing the targets, which I missed a lot this month.
And August is going to be an interesting month for you.
Yes, I've completely missed the youth month.
June was August.
At least I've managed to meet the target for disabilities, which I was like really chuffed with myself. But
well done.
The month coming on women, then it's gonna be another
Good. Well done. Any Khalileta, while you're still unmuted there, and just quickly, because I know you're going to run, what approach you've taken around the international, and then the method of inviting. Have you described that at all? The method of inviting and receiving? Khalileta, is that? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. On that, so we have just taken our system description flow and actually then included it into the process flow, because already based in terms of the system we're using for the procurement purposes, we already have those mandatory in terms of how we go about the selection of the minimum, how we go about then interacting to CSD, which is in terms of the life. So we have just taken that process and then map into which is something that we already have been doing. So we didn't define anything new around that, because it's a common system that we use across the group. So it's just easy, and already we've been implementing those, not irrespective of the new requirements. So we already have had those methods in place to say this is where the minimum is setting, and this is how then the selection goes. In like I said, in particular months or where we drive in targets, then we have the announcement. Then everybody needs to, because then we need to have that consolidated reporting as well. And like I said, it's not like it's easy. We do miss target decimally despite having 5 pages. But yeah, it's not normally just an easy that you go to market and you find revenue, because what we do for us in terms of over and above selecting to research is actually to ensure and try to vet the CSD suppliers in terms of relevant services. We don't just take it from sales, which is adding a bit of admin into the process as well, and take time as well, because we do a lot of different projects and all are in terms of respective industrial expertise. So it's not like for AIDC, because we want to focus on a certain sector of automotive. We can't just say what GGDA does on investment side, therefore applies to automotive or to the innovation hub or to the invest SA, because we're targeting different markets to drive the objective of the. So it's a bit, it's a bit in taking,
I see Deborah Zwani's on. Hi, Deborah. Any thoughts on what you've done in terms of running some of this by your auditors and getting any input from the auditors on your comment on these things? Go ahead.
Actually, we had the opportunity to engage the AG on the Section 2F application, and in terms of, and we had a thumbs up to say, the way you have put it, we won't have issues with it, and actually it came around giving them the process flow for this coming a quotation, because they had an issue in one of our finding to say why we didn't apply the Section 2F, and then it created the opportunity then to take advantage of the engagement to see, okay, this is what we actually perceiving, but only from August.
Got you.
And then we got there.
Was that the AG at your unit, or was that the AG in Pretoria? That was it the auditors that you've got currently with you?
Yes, it's the auditors that we currently with the is at the business the Gauteng area.
And what is your sense of their understanding of this instruction? Do you think they've got onto it? Because this is certainly going to be for next year. They
of the opinion that the threshold shouldn't have been increased. You know, AG always. They always feeling we always there to take advantage of the regulations, and they need to be more law enforcement, maybe bringing more of the shoulders than the police not being able to do the work. But it's always the AJ perspective. But I think there were pointers as well that we have picked up that they haven't really got their mind into when this during our engagement this period. But they say I have time to get around that, and it's your duty to make sure you comply. And we will just come and start striking the whip. But we hoping to continue with those engagements before actually they can come at the end of the road and to say you didn't apply it correctly or not.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Colette. So anyone else got any contributions, any thoughts that they want to share? Dave, Fulufelo, Garrett, Leanne. Marsh has been very quiet. Silungile, you've got a new job, I think. Well done.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, Silungile.
How are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm sorry, I was driving, so I'm connected on the phone, so I was not able to participate. So I was just listening.
You've recently been appointed SCM manager of the unit, is that right?
Yes.
Congratulations. And have you got the policy ready yet?
Not yet. But I'm busy with it.
Very good, very good.
Thank you.
All right. Let's thanks very much. Any other comments? Congratulations, Silungile. Any other comments from anyone? I certainly found this of interest. I hope you have. Anything to add, Henry? All right. Well done. You've got a day and a half, 2.5 days to get ready. In fact, you've got the whole weekend as well to get ready for the policy update. You might not be able to get the accounting officer and accounting authority to sign it off necessarily by Saturday evening. But I'm sure, I hope you found this of use. So thank you very much. Thank you to Khalaletso and the team at GGDA. Thank you for your sharing. Thank you as well, Luwazi and the team at NRF for sharing. And Sipo, thank you. Who did I miss? Emerson, thank you. Anyone else I missed? Very good. All right, everybody. Let's go. We'll thanks, Leanne. Did you? I think Leanne is just saying goodbye. All right, everybody. Yeah, go ahead, Leanne. We can't hear you. Your mic doesn't seem to be working, Leanne. All right, good. Welcome. Thanks, everybody. We'll issue. We're busy working out next week based on all the input we've got. And Dane, and if we'll let you know what's on for next week. And all the best, everybody. You take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.